Hi, and welcome to this video where we're going to go through the settings of My Movies for iPad. The settings is the same in My Movies for iPhone and can for the most part be transferred to My Movies for Android as well. I've started to synchronize a demonstration collection here, and I'll just open settings and take them from the top. First of all, you have the help and support section. This is just going to give you some information that you can look through for various support situations. The second thing you have here is synchronization area, where you can at any time click synchronize. If you made changes on another device, you can go in here and synchronize. When you start the application, it will also ask you to synchronize automatically. The next option you have here is called update profiles. When you add titles from the online service, there will be situations where other people contribute to the profiles, our moderators improve the profiles, fix data or similar. If you have the update profiles enabled, your profiles will be updated whenever there are updates in the online service. It also means that there can be changes to the data you have on the individual profiles. The next option we have here is called prompt for personalization, which is by default set to group only. It has the options disabled, group only, and enabled. Let me just go in here and show you what this does. If you go into the collection, and if you go in here, and we'll just search for a title. Like this, say add to collection. Now it's going to ask me which group I would like to add this title to. I'll just cancel this and go back in here, and I'll set this to enabled. Go back in, search for the test title, and as you can see here, now I'm asked to input various personal information at the time I enter the title. I'll just cancel this one again, go into settings, and then set this to disabled. Search for the title and click to add, and now it doesn't ask me about anything. So I could continue searching for other titles, or I can just bump out and see that my title is added here. So this was the prompt for personalization option. Then there is a setting called actors, where it's by default set to load the first 10 actors on a title. It can be set to 10, 20, 30, or all actors. If you look here, let's take a title here. You can see if we browse down to the actors section, we can see that we now have 10 actors. Go into settings again, change this to load 30. It's going to ask us to reload the actors. This is just going to take a second because it basically reloads all the information on all the titles in your collection. So we're just going to wait a second while this synchronization finishes. What the actors functionality does is that when you look at a person in the database, you can see which other titles you have for that actor. So if you care much for that information, it's a good idea to load all actors, because you otherwise won't get complete information for other titles the actor is starring in. Let's go back to our title. Just have to close it and reopen it, and we see that we now have a lot more actors for this title. Okay, so I'm going to go back into settings, and you can see here that we have cover size setting. It's by default set to thumbnails. If we go in here, we can set them to medium or full size. If you have a Retina iPad, you can't set the thumbnail option. That's going to be too small for the various covers showing in different areas of the application, so it will be default to medium. If I click this here, it's going to ask me to reload the covers. I'm not going to do that now because that's also going to take some time. but let me explain what this does. If you have a title here, all of these covers that you see in the interface, those are already covered by the default setting. But if you click on a title, you can see that it has to download a cover. This cover could be pre-downloaded if your setting was set to medium or to full, and you then would have them with you even if you don't have an internet connection. So let's go back into settings, and the next area here is the collection area, where we on top have some interface customization. There's quite a bit of options in there, so I'm just going to go in there and show you the various options. First one is the title count. That is enabled by default. It may not be enabled by default if you have upgraded from an earlier version, as the earlier versions didn't have that enabled by default. You can enable also a person's count. And then we have an option here that says collapse personal details. Let me show you what this does. Going to back out here and go into a title, and if you look at the title details page here, you can see that the first area here is a personal data area. By default, this is collapsed to only show the collection number and the group you have the title in. So if I click show more, it's going to open all these other personal informations. If we go back into settings, interface customization, and disable the collapse personal details option like this, just going to have to reopen the title here. You can see that this information is now displayed by default. So what you prefer here is up to you. Just set it back to the default setting. Then we have an option saying prefer original title. This is a bit difficult for me to show for you in this collection where I have English titles in the collection. But as an example, let's say that you had, we're just going to switch to a list view where you see the titles here. Let's say that we had a collection in Germany, in Denmark, in France, or other countries. We would see German title or the Danish title or the French title in those situations, and users in those countries can then go in and set the option prefer original title, in which case they by default will see the English titles of the various titles in the collection. So I can't show it, but try to use it if you are using the application with a collection of titles from different countries. Back into the interface customization. There's an option by default here that says display backdrops. I'm just going to show you what a backdrop is. Let's say I open a title like this. Notice how an image fades in on the background of the page. It's going to give a feeling of this movie when you browse through it. You can, if you think that those images are makes it difficult to read the screen, you can just disable them. We have to go back in like this, and you can see it's now no longer fading in the background graphics here. Okay, going back into settings, just enabling this again. We have another option here saying display wall background. This is disabled by default, but if you think that you are placed here on the main screen and this looks a bit flat, you can enable this wall background, and you can see that there's the default My Movies splash screen of covers in the background here. We have had a lot of requests of entering back in the backgrounds we had in the prior versions of the application, which was a wooden shelf and a gray shelf. We're likely going to re-add those, but we are likely also going to add an option where you can customize this wall background. So stay tuned for those updates. The reason we did not include those by default in the iOS 7 version here is that the wooden backgrounds and the gray shelf background doesn't really fit into the iOS 7 design of the application, but it's going to be re-added, then you can choose for yourself. So just going to disable this again. Next option here is list customization. If we go into the list here, you can see that we have some information above the title and some information below the title. In here I can customize what the information is going to be shown here in the various fields. So the first one is the collection number. I could change this to country, like this. Second one is the group, which I could change to let's say I change it to running time. And on the second row here, we have the year, which I could change to the release date of the title, and I can then change this to this could be my own notes, it could be who I lent it to, location or similar. I'm going to change it to edition. So if we back out, you can see that there is now different informations here. There is not an edition on all titles. It depends on if the title is a specific edition. You can see here this is explosive extended edition for this title. So this is what the list customization does. So you can choose what you would like to see on these lists. Going to switch over to the default view again. Back into settings, and this was the interface customization error. So I'm going to go back here, and you can see here if we continue with the collection area, the next thing is shake to open random. It is enabled by default. It means that if you shake your device, it's going to open a random title for the title set you're viewing at this point. Then we have an option here saying don't use sort title. I'm just going to show you what this does. If we see if I can find a good example here, we have the A team here. The A team is sorted under A for A team. That is because it has a sort title called, let me see if I can show it here. If I customize the sort title, I can't really show the sort title. Let me just see. No, the sort title isn't available for display. The A team is by default having an internal sort title called A team and therefore it's sorted under A. If I enable the option here saying don't use sort title, I go back in here, and you see that the A team is no longer sorted under A, but it is instead sorted down here under T. So this is what the do not use sort title option does. It's being a bit difficult to control the iPad simulator here with the mouse, so I'm sorry for the excessive scrolling here. Going to go back into the settings and just going to disable this again. There's the next option is one called extended watched, which is enabled by default. If you go in on a title and you click the not watched here, you can see that there's an option to select me today, or I can add a custom event saying someone viewed this title on a specific date, and I can put in some notes. This is what we call extended watched. The alternative, sorry, just had to close this. The alternative would be that we disable extended watched, and instead if I go in here, take a title, it says not watched. If I click this, it's just going to change to watched. So this is going to be a simple watched or not watched option. The extended watched is a tracking of who watched it and when was it watched. Going to go back into settings and just enable this again to have the default settings. Then we have the parental controls option, and this is a great option for those of you who have kids, because you can go in here, you can turn this on. It's going to ask me for a pin code. Just going to add one here, re-enter the pin code to make sure that you don't by accident get anything set incorrect. So what I can set now is that I can set the maximum allowed rating. I'm just going to set this to PG. The settings in here are going to be different based on which country your device is located in. So it should be the local options for the various countries. And then I can set the allow unrated option. Typically in the United States you would disable this because it's quite common for titles in the United States to be rated as a specific unrated title, which is very often not really a good title for kids to see. In other countries this is done different. I must say that we are a bit frustrated with how the United States is doing this, because you really don't want these titles to be unrated. You want them to be rated so that you can filter by them. But anyways, I suggest disabling the allow unrated option. Then we have the option to say block items inside a category or block outside a category. Right now there isn't any categories in my collection, but let's say I had a category that I called for parents only. I could click this option and I could block any titles that was inside that category. Or I could also create a category called for kids, and I could decide to block all titles that were not in this category. So it depends on how much control you want over that. And then a few new options here is that you can also disallow collection editing, or you can disallow watched marking whenever parental controls is turned on. So this is going to allow you to pass the device between friends and family if you're watching a movie and need to pick a movie, and you can then make sure that if the other person's in your household or your friend and family does not make changes to your collection. I'm just going to show you how it's going to look when parental controls is enabled. Before I do that, just going to mention here that if you don't want to filter by any titles, that you only want to use these disallow collection editing and marking, you can just choose to enable these and have the standard option kept at where they are. So I'm going to go back out here. You can see now that there's a lock up here in the where the filter button normally is, and I can click on it, and it says parental controls is set to PG. You can see that I only have titles that are PG marked or lower. If I click this and click the parental controls, it's going to ask me for my PIN code, and I can enter this, and now I can see all filters. It says parental controls is deactivated, and I can click to activate it again. So this is what the parental controls option does. And I can go in here again and I can turn it off like this. The next option here, and this is one you need to be very careful with, is an option called clear collection. Let's say that you made some mistakes in the collection, or it could be a situation where you had a common collection with a girlfriend and she left. So you can go in here and clear the collection if you want to start over. It gives you a warning message, and there is also a tick box you need to check before you can clear this collection to make sure that you do not do this by accident. Make sure that you do not use this option in any circumstances except if you really want to get rid of everything, because you're not only going to get rid of the collection on this device, you're going to get rid of the collection on all devices connected to your user account. So a warning there. Back to settings, and next section we have here is sharing, where it has the social networks option, and in here you can ask the application for creating a post when adding a title or setting a title watched, and you can say if you want to have it posted on Facebook, on Twitter, or Facebook or Twitter at the same time, or if you want the application to ask. And the same options for when setting a title watched. What the application will then do is that it's going to create a post on Facebook or Twitter on your behalf, where it includes some information about the movie you have watched. just going to show you here. This is a new option where you can change the text for when adding a title or when setting a title watched. You can see here it has some variables that is going to be filled in by the application. You can use the plus button up here to enter in a variable, but this is going to be the text that is going to be posted on the social network when you mark a title watched or when you add a title to the collection. Make sure that you do not use a text that is too long, because it's going to be posted also on if you use it also on Twitter, where the text is very small. Okay, let me go back here. There's no reason for me to post anything on Facebook or Twitter. Then the next option is the online collection. You can go in here. You can see that the online collection for this demonstration collection is enabled. This is a website where all of your titles is displayed. You can use this website to share the collection with your family or your friends. You can also choose to password protect it. Let's say you only want to share it with select people. You can enter in a password, and you can then make sure that the collection is blocked by this password, which you can then give to your family or friends. You can only set one password for the collection. You can choose some option of how your collection is going to be shown on the online collection. Going back to settings, the next option here is an email collection option. It's basically going to send an email using the email program on your device, containing a CSV file and text file with your collection in it. This is not a full information of all data in a database, but it's the most basic information in these two text files. Just going to delete this. And next option is to create a PDF report. This is going to load a browser window, so you need to be online to do this. In here you can choose between some predefined layouts. You can currently cannot customize these layouts, but you can choose which layout you would like. When you choose a layout, it's going to create a report of your collection, and it's going to send that report to your email in PDF format. You can then choose to print this report, or you can choose to send it to other people if you would like that. I know that many users use this for insurance reasons, to have a list of the titles that were in a collection in case of robbery. Just going to close this. Okay. Next option here is called Load Database Package. This is only recommended for advanced users on our Windows platform, which can make changes in the local collection on the Windows package. On the Windows application, and they can load a database package with those changes without having the changes synchronized to the online service. So this is a situation if you want to personalize some data that is not part of the personal data area, and load it directly through iTunes onto the device here. The import data option is just a link to our data importer. It's going to tell you that we have a web address called import.mymovies.dk, where you can import from other applications or from a clear text file of barcodes or IMDb IDs. Notice that when you import data from other applications, you're not actually importing the data. You're importing a list that we then can use to match your existing collection to the profiles in the My Movies service. So you're going to get the data in the My Movies service and not the data you had on the various profiles. In most situations, this is going to give you also a more detailed data coverage than what you had in your prior application. Next option is the option to connect to a My Movies server. Those of you who have a My Movies Home and Essentials server can connect the device up to this server to be able to download converted movies onto the iPad, or you can directly play the titles that has been converted with the video converter on the iPad or the iPhone. Next option here is just another mention for the server software. You can, when connected to the server, you can also check status of copied disks, and you can check status of the monitoring and other things. So it's going to give you some options. I'm not going to go through this in this video because it's too advanced to go through in this video. The next option here is a remote control option. This is a remote control option for users of Windows Media Center, MyMovies Windows Media Center, or Dune players. They can use this option to add a device that they then can remote control. You can see that the remote comes up here. This is a remote control that you can see for Windows Media Center. So then you can remote control MyMovies Windows Media Center or MyMovies running on a Dune, and you can even choose to start playback of a title on the Windows Media Center or the Dune player. I'm also not going to go through this in this video because it's going to be too much. Going to back out here. See, the next option is just an option to subscribe to our newsletter. There's a standard newsletter and there's a release note that we send out when there's new releases. Okay, next options are links to the MyMovies for iPhone. It's going to be for iPad in the iPhone application naturally, and a link to the MyMovies for Mac OS X application. We would like to have included links also for our Android and Windows software here, but Apple does not allow that in the store. And then there's an important option here that is rate on the App Store, where you can go to the App Store and rate the application. We very much would like to recommend and hope that you would rate the application each time a new version is sent out. Ratings really helps the sales of the application, and by improving the sales of the application, it's going to also improve the amount of development time and support time that we can put into the product. So please support us by rating the application. So this finalizes the video on the various settings in the MyMovies for iPad application, carried over also to MyMovies for iPhone, and for the most parts also to MyMovies for Android. So thank you for watching this.